don't know if you know this, but NFL players are fighting for key incentives this weekend, and here's how you can take advantage in the betting market. Because these are 10 player incentives that will help you win your bets or your fantasy football league if you're still playing in week 18. And we start with the ageless one, Mr. Mike Evans, who continues to dominate. He did that again in week 17. And now look at this right here. If we pull up his season stats, all he needs is 85 yards to get 1,000 yards. So that's kind of an incentive to keep his 1,000-yard streak alive every year of his career or whatever it is. But look at this as well. If he gets another 85 yards, gets to 1,000, another 5 catches and gets to 70, Mike Evans unlocks a $3 million bonus. Yes, $3 million. So yeah, I think he's a little extra motivated this week. You can see that right here in his annual incentive. These are his contract details. He gets, if we pull it up here, $3 million for 70 catches, 1,000 yards, and 10 touchdowns. So that's obviously, he's already hit the 10 touchdowns. He did that last week by scoring 2 touchdowns. He just needs 5 catches, and we're going to look in a second. He's been doing that often, and 85 yards for $3 million. And he'll have a nice matchup this week. I mean, the Bucs are still playing for something. Obviously, the Saints aren't. The Saints don't even know who's on their offense at this point. That Monday night game against Green Bay, they were down to like 5th stringers at almost every single position. You can see right here, they're 14-point favorites against the Saints. The Saints have not been all that great this year, and now this is the first time in a while that Mike Evans is going to face the Saints without Marshawn Lattimore, so he probably won't get locked up this time. According to PFF, through the first 17 weeks of the year, the Saints ranked 24th in secondary play. And now if we were to go over to the recent play of Mike Evans, his last game he gets 8 catches, then 5, then 9, then 4, then 8, then 5. I mean, the guy's basically hitting 5 catches in almost every single game then he's going out there in, so he should be able to hit that number. The big one is 85 receiving yards. He gets 97 this past week, 159, 118, so he's hit that in 3 of his last 5 games. And the important thing here is Baker Mayfield's going to take care of his guys. In a game where the Bucs are 14-point favorites and they know that Mike Evans has $3 million on the line. This isn't just $100,000 for a guy Mike Evans who's already rich. $3 million still moves the needle. And the most appealing part is that Mike Evans right now, at least on Prize Picks, his line opened up at 88.5 receiving yards. You can see that right here. We took the over 88.5 receiving yards. We also took 4 other incentive plays that we'll talk about throughout this video to try and turn $20 into nearly $400. You can as well. We'll get to that when we get to that. So Mike Evans is obviously in a really nice position incentive-wise this week, and also for the Bucs to make the playoffs, and so is this next guy. And that's a quarterback in Geno Smith. Now, Geno Smith obviously is in line for the playoffs this week. They're not yet eliminated. They have to beat the Rams, and then some other things have to go their way. But look at this right here. He has an incentive this week, and it's all around his 2022 career high, 4,282 yards. They said if you can top that number, we'll pay you a nice, lovely bonus of $2 million. Well, Geno Smith right now has 4,097 yards. I'll spare you having to do that math. He needs 186 passing yards this week to cash in $2 million. Again, $2 million is not chump change. $2 million is like 10% of Geno Smith's contract this year. That is meaningful. And this week, Geno's going to take on the Rams. It's actually a 2.5-point favored. The Rams defense is playing really well lately, but they're still a bottom 10 secondary. And earlier this season, again, the Rams are a little bit more banged up at this point, but Geno Smith went off for 363 yards. He had 3 touchdowns in that game. He went absolutely ballistic. And not only does Geno have to get 186 yards to win $2 million, he has a separate incentive. If his team either makes the playoffs or hits 10 wins, he'll get $2 million extra. And the team right now has 9 wins. So obviously there's built-in motivations just to win the game to make the playoffs, but you get that extra $2 million as well. He obviously wants to win, but it's nice to get that extra $2 million. The big one is 186 passing yards. That cashes in $2 million. So we took Geno's over passing yards. Geno's passing yards are set at 251. That's of course above his 186 yards. So we're banking on him getting that and then also going for a little bit more here in a really nice matchup in a must-win game, a must-win playoff game to get in. They're slight favorites. Should be a nice little bit of a potential shootout in this one, division rivals. Now I'm taking these incentive plays and there'll be a whole lot more as the week goes on. They'll probably all be up there in my opinion. I'm taking them over on Prize Picks. They've been our partner now for over 4 years. We've been partnering up with Prize Picks. We're not just jumping around. We're partnering with them. We're partnering with them. No. We're just saying with Prize Picks, they've been absolutely great. I think they have the best user face, and you can take some of these incentives right here. I mean, we talked about the Mike Evans one. That's right here, 88 yards. They have a bunch of other plays already up for next week. There'll be even more. You can go different sports as well if you want to do that. But here's the important part. Prize Picks is giving you a free $50 bet when you join with code SAL23 today. SAL23. You'll get a free $50 bet, and you can also share this in your group chat so your friends can get it as well. So all you have to do is sign up and deposit with code SAL23. You play $5, they send you 50 right back to use this week on some of these incentive plays, and then moving forward into the NFL playoffs. So shout out to Prize Picks for being an awesome sponsor these past 4 years. Make sure to use code SAL23 when you sign up. And the next player who is available on Prize Picks at a very nice number is Courtland Sutton. And Courtland Sutton this season, let's look at it right now. So Courtland Sutton, right now you can see right here, he's top 20 in the NFL with 983 receiving yards, having a solid season, 7 touchdowns. What Sutton needs to get a bonus is 1,065 receiving yards. Kind of a weird number, but to spare you doing the math, he needs 82 more receiving yards to cash in a $500,000 bonus. $500,000, especially for a receiver who's not as of right now paid massive money, is a significant amount. And if we look through his game logs right here, has he gone over this 82-yard mark at all this season? Well, if you scroll down more recently in the second half, as Bo Nix has been playing better and connecting with Sutton, he's gone over it once, twice. He got really close with 78, 3 times, 4 times in the span of a month and a half. In these last couple of weeks, he had 32, he had 50. Okay, still decent games overall. This past week, he didn't get there either. But if we look at this right now, he's hit over 82 yards in 4 games this season. And of course, now there's added incentive that this is the final game of the year. And it's in a matchup that normally would be a really difficult matchup. Even though they're at home, they're facing the Chiefs. But you can see right here, the Broncos are 8.5-point favorites because it's already been reported that the Chiefs are expected to rest key starters in week 18. So he should be going up against some backups, if not all backups in the Chiefs secondary, especially by the time the second half comes. And right now, the Broncos are in that final playoff spot. They have 9 wins. If they win, they're in. It's as simple as that. So obviously, they're going to be playing their starters this week. Bo Nix will be playing. Sutton will be playing. There'll be extra motivation, of course, because of the playoff berth. And then if indeed they're in a spot where they're 8.5-point favorites this week, as you can see right here, and they're leading in the third or fourth quarter pretty significantly, and they say, oh, we need Sutton for 16 more yards like we saw with DeAndre Hopkins and Ryan Tannehill last year, we might just get that easy 16-yard completion. So you can consider taking Sutton's yards. We took that 68.5 receiving yards. I'll show you this whole entry at the end, but Sutton 68.5 receiving yards is also one that we took. The next player we got to talk about here is Tony Pollard, the Tennessee Titans running back who missed this past week with not only an ankle injury, but they were saying more so is because of the flu, but he has a lot to play for this weekend because if we look at his season stats right now, he has 1,017 rushing yards despite being banged up for like half of the year, it seems. If he gets to 1,100 rushing yards, he gets $250,000. So that's 83 rushing yards. If he gets to 7 touchdowns, which is a little bit more unlikely to have a 2-touchdown game on the ground, but if he gets to 7 touchdowns, he gets another $250,000. So Tony Pollard, like I said at the beginning of this, has a lot to play for. $500,000 at stake this weekend for Tony Pollard. The 83 rushing yards is more than doable. Now, as I mentioned, he was on the injury report this last week. If you look at Pollard, he had the ankle injury. It ended up causing him to miss the game, but if you scroll over a little bit here, he did not practice all week. He was a DNP. He ended up getting ruled out because of the flu, they said, though. Now, of course, I'm sure the ankle was also part of this, but he was dealing with the flu. We'll see now heading into this week if he's able to play. We have to see that, but there's a really important piece to add in here if he is able to play. Tajay Spears hurt his head this past week, and he's already been ruled out for week 18, or at least it's basically been hinted at that by Coach Callahan here. He said he's not going to play in week 18, meaning that Tony Pollard would be the clear-cut starter if he's able to suit up in a nice matchup as well. You can see right here that the Titans are actually home favorites, 4.5-point favorites against the Texans this week. The Texans who ranked 22nd at stopping the run. So all we have to do this week is get Tony Pollard out there. The guy has $500,000 at stake. $250,000 of that is pretty simple to get if he just rushes for 83 yards. You get 15 to 20 carries, probably hitting that mark. So Pollard's rushing yards are also appealing this week, depending on where the line comes out. They're not out as of this recording. Next up, let's go to the defensive end of the ball. Let's give some love to the defense really quick. Josh Sweat of the Philadelphia Eagles, he needs, as of right now, he sits at 8 sacks. He did not get any this past week. He needs 2 sacks to hit a $1 million bonus. Yes, $1 million is a whole heck of a lot of money, even for Josh Sweat. Now, if we look at his matchup this week, he's at home as a favorite. He's taking on the New York Giants, who, as of right now, have a bottom 5 pass blocking unit on the entire season. They allow 3.2 sacks per game. I'll say it again. The Giants allow 3.2 sacks per game, the 4th most in the NFL. Now, of course, the issue is that the Philadelphia Eagles are locked into the 2 seed. They're 4-point favorites because the Giants just stink, and the Eagles are still at home, and Kenny Pickett has shown to be decent, like we saw this past week, to still beat this Giants defense. So there's a chance Josh Sweat doesn't play. If it was a half a sack, if it was 1 sack, maybe they put him out there for a quarter or 2. 2 sacks is a little bit more tough to get. Even some teams might just, like good organizations like Philly, if he gets maybe a sack early on in this game, take him out and say, we'll just give you your $1 million bonus anyway, so you don't get hurt. So we have to track these stuff here. Are they going to sit Sweat or not? That's something to obviously keep an eye on. Another thing to keep an eye on is J.K. Dobbins' playing status for week 18, because if he's active, all J.K. Dobbins needs, if you look right here, he's at 842 yards. If he's able to hit 900 rushing yards, he has an incentive that pays him an extra $150,000. And if we look through his game logs on Player Profiler this season, hitting 58 rushing yards, he's had, let's see right here, 139, that's all he needs is 58, 131, he had 54, 62, 102. Like, he's hit this a bunch this season. I believe he's hit this 5 different times this season, and that's also factoring, of course, he missed a lot of games with an injury. He came back last week and looked pretty solid enough, getting you there with a touchdown late in that one. And now this week, he gets an ideal matchup. He's a 6-point road favorite against the Raiders this week, a Raiders team that ranks bottom 5 in tackling, a Raiders team that week 1 against them, J.K. Dobbins went absolutely ballistic in his first game back from an Achilles tear. There's questions on what his role would be. He takes 10 carries for 135 yards against the same Raiders team. Only needs 58 this week against that Raiders team. Now, of course, the Chargers have already locked up a playoff spot. Will they be trying to get their positioning changed at all in this one in terms of which wild card they end up having? We'll see. They're currently 6-point favorites. It seems like the starters will play, but we'll have to get more news as the week goes on. And we'll also need to get more news on Saquon Barkley's status, because as of right now, there is the record books to be chasing. The NFL rushing record is Eric Dickerson with 2,105 yards. Saquon Barkley, after a massive game this past week of having 31 carries, 167 rushing yards, getting pulled in the fourth quarter, he now has 2,500 yards. So they got him over the 2,000 yard mark. It seemed like they were trying to do that in the fourth quarter by giving him more carries. So he's now 100 yards away from Eric Dickerson's record, from tying it, 101 yards away from breaking it. This week, he takes on the New York Giants, his former team. What poetic justice this would be. The New York Giants team that earlier this season, Saquon Barkley went out there and he ended up posting 176 yards against. He got pulled in the fourth quarter of that game as well. So if he doesn't get pulled in the fourth quarter, who knows? Maybe he's only 40 or 60 yards away from this record right now. But of course, the biggest question is, like we mentioned with his teammate Josh Sweat on the defensive side of the ball, will the Eagles play Saquon Barkley in a meaningless game? I'm probably going to say they're not going to play him to go out there for 101 yards in a meaningless game. Saquon earlier this season was even on mic. They caught him saying like, no, let the young guys eat in the fourth quarter against the Giants, even though his coach wanted him to go out there to get his single game rushing record. Now, his own single game rushing record is definitely different than the NFL leading history. I mean, you're in the record books forever. Your jersey sells forever. You're mentioned forever and ever whenever somebody comes close to your record or among the greats. So there's a chance that they do let him go out here. I think it's pretty slim, so we'll have to track that one as well. Now, Saquon was a former Giant, a current Giant. Malik Neighbors has a lot to play for this weekend. If we're talking about the record books, the Giants, I mean, they're not going to be sitting their starters. They're not going for the playoffs. They might as well get this guy out there to put up as many receptions as he can, because right now Neighbors has 104 receptions, tied for third in NFL history. He's one catch behind Puka Nacua for setting the rookie wide receiver record. You can see that right here. So this is something that's very appealing. These are just for rookies, not overall receptions in history. So right here, he's just one behind two. So he needs two catches to break Puka Nacua's rookie wide receiver record. And he's four behind Brock Bowers, who currently has the record heading into week 18. And Bowers is probably going to play and even add to this a little bit more. So there's a couple things at stake for Neighbors this week. The rookie wide receiver reception record just needs two catches. He's done that in every single game. And then he needs to outpace Brock Bowers by 4 catches to tie him, or 5 in week 18 to break the overall rookie reception record. Now, just for a little background, Neighbors is averaging 7.5 catches per game this season. And even after this past week, he's still averaging 7.5 catches. He's going to have a matchup this week against the Eagles, who, as we've been mentioning with their players like Josh Sweat and Saquon Barkley, there's a chance the Eagles rest some starters this week. So normally this would be a really tough matchup for Neighbors, who didn't have the greatest game last time out against Philadelphia, but he probably is going to be going up there against some backup cornerbacks. I don't think Quinion Mitchell is going to be out there all that much, or some of their star safety play. Another defender to talk about, because this one is definitely achievable, has to do with Dante Fowler, who was able to get a sack on Sunday Night Football in week 17, which put him to 10.5 sacks on the season, meaning that he only needs a half a sack. If he gets to 11 sacks this year, he gets a contract incentive of $1.5 million. It's not $150K like Dobbins. It's not even $1 million like Josh Sweat. It's $1.5 million. So you know damn well he's looking at his numbers this week. He's looking at his contract and saying, oh, I only need a half a sack. Let's go get it. Washington's going to take on a pretty bad Dallas team overall. The Dallas team, both sides of the ball are beat up. Obviously now way more on offense without CeeDee Lamb and Dak spin out, but this Commanders team is still favorites. They should be able to get after the passer in this game. And if you look at Dallas on the season right now, Dallas is allowing 2.2 sacks per game, which isn't a lot, but it's more than a half a sack. It's in the bottom half of the league as well. So this is a decent spot for Dante Fowler to get this $1.5 million bonus. So check if any of Fowler's sack props are out there, and then also look at his teammate on the offensive side of the ball in Zach Ertz, who has a lot to play for in week 18. And man, this man just earned a lot of money as well in week 17, because he caught 2 touchdowns, which gave him a $250,000 bonus. He had like 70 yards or 70 plus yards, which got him another $250,000. But he still has a lot to play for this week, because here's his season stats. He has 61 catches. If he gets to 70, 9 catches is a lot, of course, but if he gets to 70, he gets another $250K. He's at 610 receiving yards. If he gets to 90, that's a lot, of course, for a tight end. He gets another $250K, and if he gets to 8 touchdowns, which he had 2 this past weekend, he gets to $250K. So there's $750K on the line here. A stat line of 9 catches for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns would get him $750K. Of course, that exact stat line is not likely, but maybe he pops off in one of those departments. 6 catches, maybe has a long run for 100 yards, and he gets himself a bonus. The point being, there is a lot on the line for Zach Ertz if he ends up suiting up this weekend against a Dallas Cowboys defense that does allow the 3rd most receiving production this season. Now, this next one I'm highly skeptical skeptical it even comes into play because of some of the news we've already gotten, but I'll at least bring it up. And that's DeAndre Hopkins, who as of right now only needs 1 touchdown reception. If you look at this, he has 6 touchdown receptions. His contract did carry over from the Tennessee Titans. So he has 5 touchdowns on the year. He needs 6 if we pull up his incentives. If he gets 6 touchdowns, he gets $500,000, which is a significant amount of money. We saw last year with the Tennessee Titans in week 18, Ryan Tannehill fed DeAndre Hopkins to hit his receiving yard and his overall receptions bonus in that game in week 18. But of course, I bring you back to this tweet from Jay Glazer before the week 17 games kicked off. The Chiefs are expected to rest key starters in week 18. I would consider DeAndre Hopkins the guy they traded for midseason, one of the best wide receivers we've seen in the past decade in the NFL. Even though Marquise Brown is back and Kelsey is there and Worthy's breaking out, I would still consider DeAndre Hopkins, who's been playing limited the past few months, a key player. I don't think he's going to start, but if he does, they're probably going for that touchdown. Next man up, the Bake Man himself, Baker Mayfield, who's coming off of another massive performance, who's coming off of a situation now where he's trying to fight his team into the playoffs for the second straight season in week 18. We'll see if he can do it. He has a bonus this week that he's trying to hit. It is a $500,000 bonus. If he finishes top 10 in yards per attempt this season, Baker gets $500,000. And he's in a pretty good spot because he's entering week 17 or week 18 right now, ranking 7th. I have this sorted by yards per attempt. He ranks 7th overall, averaging 7.7 yards per attempt. If you scroll down, Joe Burrow is like one of the only guys. Josh Allen can kind of catch him. We don't know if Josh Allen's going to play. Russell Wilson, I guess, can catch him. Jaden Daniels, I guess, can catch him. So this really basically comes down to a couple of other quarterbacks playing well and Baker just not playing well. So what we need is Baker to play decent to well, and then he'll be fine. And he's going to have the nice matchup to do that. We talked about it earlier with his teammate Mike Evans. We ended up getting New Orleans in a nice matchup against New Orleans here. This is a bottom 10 secondary overall. Baker earlier this year shredded them for 325 yards. He averaged 9 yards per attempt, I believe, against this team. So that was great. He goes for 4 touchdowns, even though he threw 3 interceptions in that game. That was, I believe, back in week 6 or so. So Baker here, this is a situation where I'm looking at his passing yards for a couple of reasons. So you can see here we took the Geno play. I took Baker's over 266.5 passing yards because of everything I just said. It's a must-win game. He's trying to get some contract incentives. There's some other incentives he can also hit, although unlikely. And we pair it with Mike Evans' 88.5 receiving yards because these are correlated. If Baker's going over his 266, decent chance Mike Evans is going over his and vice versa. So again, that's the entire entry we took on PrizePicks. I'll actually go through it a little bit slower here. We have the Sutton play, the Evans, the Saquon, the Baker, and the Geno, but we still have 2 more plays that I'm waiting to come out on PrizePicks to take those. We'll talk about those in a second, but just a reminder, code SAL23 or the QR code on the screen to take advantage of this over on PrizePicks. Now, one of those guys I was talking about is Marquez Valdez-Scantling of the Saints. He returned from injury last week, and he has a little bit extra motivation this week because he just needs 1 touchdown catch. All he needs is 1 touchdown catch for $250,000. And as you can see, we've been talking about this Bucs game. The Saints are 14-point underdogs. They're probably going to be throwing the ball 30 to 40 times in this game, so that bodes well for MVS to probably see minimum 3 targets, maximum 6, 7 targets, and I think they're going to be shooting for him, at least if you're looking at a team that has nothing to play for. There's really nothing to build around on this team as well. You probably need a new quarterback moving forward. You signed Alvin Kamara, but he's older, right? You don't really have receivers outside of Chris Olave that you trust. Rashid Shaheed coming off of a serious injury. Just go get your guy MVS. That's all you're playing for. Get these guys their incentives in week 18. And another guy we got to talk about is Zadarius Smith. He's a defender for the Detroit Lions. All he needs right now, if we look at this, he has 8 sacks. If he hits 10 sacks on the season, he gets a $250,000 bonus. Now, I'm recording this right before Monday Night Football starts because I want to get these out as soon as possible so the lines don't move for you beautiful people. So if he gets a sack on Monday Night Football, great. He only needs 1 more sack heading into week 18. All you have to look at is that he needs 10 sacks on the season. As of this recording, he needs 2 more, and in week 18, he faces his former team, the Vikings, at home in a game that could be for the division at that point, so we will see. Overall, the teams could be going for a 15-win season as well, which is pretty cool. So in this matchup against the Vikings, they rank bottom 5 in the league, allowing 3.1 sacks per game. It is a nice matchup for him. We're hoping that he gets a sack on Monday Night Football week 17, so he only needs 1 in week 18, but he could still have a multi-sack game, so another incentive to keep an eye on when you're looking at the prop market for Zadarius Smith sacks. So these have been the 10 player incentives that can help you whether you're in the betting markets this week or still playing in the week 18 championship game. I appreciate you all a ton. We'll have more content as the weeks go on, especially as the NFL draft gets closer and the Super Bowl as well. So thank you for tuning in. Be sure to hit the subscribe button before you go, and I'll see you all in the next one.